And we're live.
We are live.
And we're live, baby.
Live in Fantasyland. I've got dragons.
For context, if you are not watching the video, we have fantasy backgrounds, and it's great. Check it out on YouTube.
I gotta forget that. This is all audio.
They can't see anything except what they're looking at.
Okay, let's ostracize the blind people. All right, come on, Alex.
Canceled. I've been canceling myself. Cool. What are we talking about today, George?
We've been throwing some ideas around, and I think for us, the start would be like an etiquette, like gym etiquette, outdoor etiquette, and sort of like ethics thrown in there, because I've been climbing a lot at a popular destination, and you see people do some things right and some things not so right.
Right.
So maybe just spreading the word on gym etiquette and climbing etiquette.
Yeah, totally. And I think it starts in the gym, because people just like have really poor gym etiquette, and then they just take that shit outside, and they have really poor outdoor climbing etiquette.
Totally. Do you want to start on your biggest pet peeves inside the gym? Are we talking strength training or climbing gym?
Well, I think we could talk about both, because I think they're slightly different, but I guess there's probably going to be some overlapping things too. So the things that are my biggest pet peeve, especially in like a weight gym, is not picking up or cleaning up after yourself. And there's probably overlap to climbing as well. But like, it's pretty simple. Don't be a child. Like, you're an adult in a gym with other adults. You should be putting your weights back where they go, and you should be cleaning, like sanitizing your workstation, because you just had ass sweat all over the bench. And gyms, if they are a competent gym, will have cleaning equipment for you to wipe down all of your shit after you use it. Those are my two biggest ones that I see all the time. Like, I'll literally go into the gym at the front, and in between my sets, I will clean up after other people. It happens every single time. And I'm like, I should be getting paid to do this, but I'm just a member and I'm paying you to clean your gym. Yeah, it's annoying.
I don't even know if I was just crossing over to like the outdoor crag and climbing atmosphere, and I don't think anybody cares how much shit is thrown all over the place. I mean, obviously you don't want to, but like, it's kind of ridiculous how sprawled people get outside.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
That's like the number one thing I do when I'm working with clients, or like mountain guiding itself, or doing an instructional clinic at a crag. It's like, please put all of your things in like one spot instead of yard sailing everything around the whole boulder or crag or whatever. Yeah. And that's like impossible for people, I think, to do. Do better, everyone.
Well, and it's like, dude, have a little common sense, because like, even the last time when we were in Red Rocks, remember it was great temps. This was like over a year ago. It was like last fall, the fall before last fall. So many people out there, especially in the craft boulders. And we would go up to a boulder where there's like, 10 people, and the trail, people would be either sitting in the trail or have all of their shit directly in the trail that's leading by the boulder. And it's like, oh, have some fucking common sense. Like, people still have to walk here. I don't know. It's just, yard sailing is a great term to use. I love that.
I don't even anymore. Like, I don't even really, I mean, this is probably not ethically, it's ethically dubious, but if there's like shit in the trail, or like in a common spot, or next to a bouldering pad underneath the climb, I just move it out of the way myself. Like,
I just walk over it, dude.
Move it. And I'm like,
I just literally step on it.
You know, one thing that I recently learned or like saw happen in person for like an ethic or etiquette style comment that has stuck with me for like 3.5 months now is one of the people who was climbing with us. I don't remember who it was, but they asked the climber, how would you like to be supported?
Oh, I like
And
that.
like, yeah, dude, I thought that was like an amazing way to not only like ask how they would like to be supported in the sense of like, do you want me to tell you beta or like remind me to breathe or XYZ? Because some people like want you to talk to them. Some people don't want you to talk to them. And it's hard to know where that line is. And so it was just so simple when someone was like, how would you like to be supported? I was like, oh my God, I'm using this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's amazing. Oh, I love that. Yeah, because I mean, some people like, I like positive affirmations if I'm climbing and projecting. Like, I'm not really conscious of it happening, but I know that it's doing something. Like, especially when you go back and like watch video, I'm like, cool. I was definitely soaking in people yelling at me to like try harder. Some people want silence, you know?
Totally.
So I think that's really cool to take into consideration that like not everybody wants to be screamed at.
Totally. I mean, mine is like, just remind me to breathe. Like,
Yeah.
that's probably the biggest thing. And I do like that, like, sub channel that happens when you're climbing and you hear things, but you're not really aware that you've listened to it and done it. It's kind of just autonomous.
Yeah.
It's kind of a wild point of climbing for me. It's like being supported is great because you always have that hesitation, depending on who you are. Like, I might have a hesitation, like, I don't know if I can make that move or whatever it is. And someone just screams like, go or jug or whatever. And it's just like, oh, I got the extra gumption to just make the move or try it.
Well, it's like that outside voice for me, it's like becomes my internal voice. And so anything that's said externally, I don't take as an external voice. It's just literally me telling myself to do it. It's awesome. So when you have good support, I think it can be really powerful and can change the way you climb. But yeah, not everybody wants or needs that. We're all different. So taking that into consideration is really awesome.
Yeah. How would you like to be supported? Always ask. I mean, this is a big pet peeve of mine. Always ask to give beta, like information on the climb.
Don't fucking beta spray.
Especially like, yeah, I mean, just don't beta spray unless it's like appropriate or they have given you permission or they have asked for beta. I think like one of the best parts about climbing is discovering that process for yourself. And if someone's like XYZ, even if it's not going to work for you, it kind of fucks with at least like thought process or problem solving.
Yeah. Like that's like you just said, that's one of the most fun parts about unlocking a boulder is doing the puzzle of all of the moves. And if somebody's just like, oh yeah, you just start here and you do this right hand, you do this and then blah, blah, blah. It takes the magic out of it. Unless that's what you want, unless you're trying to like flash it and you're like, spray me down. But it's just a consent thing. Like literally anytime I'm going to give beta, I ask, hey, would you like some beta? And if they say no, then I say, cool. Well, if you change your mind, just let me know. I've got good beta for it. That works for me, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Two things that I honestly don't think are as common as I thought were chalking up your hands before you touch the holds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's necessarily a gym etiquette that I've done, but outdoors for sure.
Definitely matters more outdoors. But I would say to also do that in the gym because the oils on your hands, if they're not chalked up, are going to get onto the holds and it's going to make the holds have less texture and less grip so that whoever does climb it is going to have to brush it. It's just annoying. So just don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing happens on the outdoor holds, and that's why they get like fucking glossy.
So greasy. Wipe your shoes off too, like because the little like grains of sand and dirt that's stuck on your shoes, if you climb on especially something like sandstone, you are going to wear down those little footholds into nothing.
Yeah, or the sediments on like or limestone, you know, like how polished they can get.
Oh my god, yeah.
Dude, it's kind of crazy. Like kind of a side tangent here. This is my first season climbing in the buttermilks more frequently, and I was familiar with like sandstone glossy holds or limestone glossy holds because of typically like overuse, not wiping the dirt off, or like I've even seen like in Arkansas like blowtorch holds, which is obviously don't fucking blowtorch climb.
Idiots.
But some of the patina out here is just so glassy that it just comes like that, which is kind of wild. So it's very like friction dependent and things like that, but it's not necessarily because of overuse and things like that. Some of them are just like this like bulletproof glass, which is kind of wild and inspiring at the same time. Horrific and inspiring.
We have a lot of that up in like Little Cottonwood, and a lot of it is from it's just the way the quartz monzonite is. There's a lot of quartz in it, so there's a lot of like crystal that has no texture, but then it's also from how many people climb out there that it's so glassy and
it's all monzonite as well in the Little Cottonwood and stuff, Big Cottonwood.
Yeah, Little Cottonwood is not. It is technically quartz monzonite.
Wow, that's cool. I mean, that's exactly what the buttermilks are as well. A lot of people think it's granite.
Yeah. People assume that it's just granite because it looks similar to granite. And I don't know enough about geology. I know that it's similar, but that's not technically like granite.
Yeah, and
speaking
of ethics, we've had like our first real what was it, atmospheric river of the season here in the Sierra. And you know, if you go to like Red Rocks or somewhere like that where the sandstone is typically more brittle, there's like at least a 24-hour waiting period after rains, making sure that the rock is super dried out. It won't be as brittle and prone to breaking. So a lot of people assume that the buttermilks, and I mean, I even assumed that like Little Cottonwood was granite in the sense that wet granite is, you know, I mean, it's stronger than wet sandstone, but actually the way that the quartz monzonite holds water, it's just as susceptible to that style of seep and breaking when it's wet as sandstone is. And so there's been a lot of hold breaking here and the buttermilks, and I think it's because like people just assume it's granite and it's like good to go when it's damp, and it's not.
Interesting. I haven't heard of anything like that happening in Little Cottonwood. Well, I imagine I imagine if they're similar, they're not exactly the same type of rock because obviously they're. I mean, you just look at the difference between Little Cottonwood granite and like Bishop granite, very different coloring and like texture. So I would imagine they're slightly different because I've never heard of holds breaking from wetness in well, there's not a lot of holds in the first place.
Yeah.
It's really not like, you know, not a lot of holds to break in the first place. But typically, like, you know, if it rains and it's like breezy, so it rains in the morning and it's like really breezy, the boulders are going to be dry by the evening. And from everything I've heard out here with this type of rock is like there's not a waiting period. But who knows? We're not geologists. We're just climbers.
Yeah. I mean, just to look at like the textual, that's a new word, differences. You know, like the Waco features in the buttermilks, or at the top, there's like almost like these little
pockets, like the actual like little Wacos. Yeah,
exactly, little Wacos, and that is essentially. I'm not sure which part of the monzonite is affected by the water itself, but that's how those pools or those Wacos form. Is that one part is more susceptible to the water, so it eats inside and degrades it, as the other part is not. And so that's like kind of I could see why it's kind of wild that they look so different, but I guess age and things like that as well, because there'll be no holds left on these in a fucking 100 million years, probably.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Well, I guess they're both glacial deposits, right? Because the buttermilks, I'm almost positive they were deposited by a glacier, the same with Little Cottonwood. Those are like, a glacier formed. I think I have that right. Yeah, Little Cottonwood by a glacier. So a lot of that also being rockfall, that fell from higher up in the canyons, it's like glacier deposited boulders, which is cool.
Totally.
But yeah, on to more
things that people shouldn't fuck up.
Etiquette things.
I don't know if this is like an etiquette thing, but there's a lot of I've been predisposed to a lot of secondhand conversation of people who would walk up to a climb just because there was like a group on it and assume the pad placements were correct. And then miss the pads.
Don't rely on other people to keep you safe is, I think, the overarching thing. And dude, so many times, so many people don't know how to place pads, and there's honestly not a lot of information out there on pad placement, which is really interesting. Like you'll see so much information about bullshit training methodologies, but not on like the best ways to spot or the best ways to do pad placement or how to like clean up after yourself. It's really weird. And those are like the things that I feel like people need to know more of, not like, hey, take this exercise band and do your rotator cuff. It's like, how do you, maybe let's stop each other from breaking ankles and actually place our pads better.
Yeah, I mean, that probably takes a bit more, I can see why it's a little bit more difficult because it involves so much of the problem solving aspect and anticipation of difficult sequences and how the body's going to fall and things like that would just take so much time that we don't have to use in the gym. So that's probably one of those things where like people are spending, especially these days, like an insane amount of time learning how to climb in a safe, quote unquote, environment in the bouldering gym or climbing gym, and not having to worry about that. Whereas like the first time I go outside, it's like, I'm hitting the ground. Like I got to make sure that I know where the sequences are, where I'm going to fucking pump.
For sure. That learning from going out inside to outside is pretty steep. And I think a lot of people just don't have good mentorship or leadership when they go outside, and they kind of tend to all just go outside as newbies together and break ankles.
Yeah. And like, I don't know if people do this in the gym, but ask to like work on a problem together. Like I typically, it's like, a sexual escapade, ask for consent.
Yeah.
So I feel like the same thing is like missing a lot. It's just assumed that like it's open to everyone. Totally. And I always think like, yeah, you should just ask if you're going to join on someone else's project, someone else's boulder, to join pads. It's like, bouldering is such a social and communal aspect because it's so nice to have such a big floor, like a gym floor out there. But you never want to like step on someone else's toes, especially if they want to be alone or if they want to film themselves and not have your ass in their way.
Yeah, totally. I think it's just common courtesy too. I mean, I'll even do it in the gym. If I can see that somebody is like actively working on a problem and not just like doing it as a warm up, if they're like projecting it and I say it's like something that for me would be a warm up, I'm going to ask them, hey, do you mind if I run a lap on that? Or like, can I get in there with you? I don't, cause that's another big pet peeve of mine is like, if I'm actively projecting something and it's like very obvious, and then somebody just comes and like floats it. I mean, again, this is probably something that like, we need to work on with like our egos, but it's just kind of shitty. But if they were just like, hey man, do you mind if I jump on? I'm going to do this real quick. And I'll be like, no, like, please help me with the beta. But to just walk up and crush it and then walk away and not say a word, it's just weird. Just have some courtesy, man. We're all
weird. There's like there's like these it's like a funny line because like that can be so off-putting. Like I hear it all the time, like the team kids sending your projects.
Oh yeah.
But like I've been in place, I mean here in Bishop or like Squamish, there's like the wizards of the forest and of the buttermilks who don't even have a fucking pad. They come in with their chalk bag and they're like, hey, do you mind if I put a lap on this? And you're like, oh, sure, dude. And then they just float it and they go on to the next one and they just do circuits on all the shit. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, part of me is like, and a part of me is like, respect.
Yeah, man. That's the cool thing is like, if they would have just watch them and like, what's up? And then just fucking rush it and then not said a word, you'd be like, well, why is that guy a dick? But if they're like, hey, do you mind if I do a lap? You know, I'm a fucking wizard. I'm sorry. This is like 4 grades below what I can actually climb. It's like, yeah, this is my lifetime project. Go for it.
Cast more spells, wizard man, or
Yeah.
they.
You brought up filming, which is a thing I was going to bring up in regards to climbing gyms and regular gyms. Like, I think it's really beneficial to film yourself. It's helpful to just have that feedback and to be able to look at your video and be like, whoa, what did I do wrong? Or like, what's going on here? But also you have to take into consideration that like you're in a public space and your filming does not take priority over other people using that space. So try to like, if you're going to film something, like maybe try not to like actively have it pointing in the direction of other people who haven't consented to being filmed, especially like in a strength training gym. Cause like, I don't know, that can be kind of vulnerable. Like people don't like to be looked at. So if you're setting up your exercise and your camera is pointed at you and then directly at a girl doing like hip thrusts, she might feel really uncomfortable. So like, just think about the angle. And like, if you can't get around that and like somebody is actively in it, I like to just be like, hey, do you mind if I film myself doing this exercise right here? I just want to make sure you're cool with it. And almost all the time people are like, yeah, it's chill. But I think the same thing goes for like climbing outside. If you want to film yourself, just be like, just let people know like, hey, I've set up a camera over there. Also, so they don't get in the way of your camera and ruin your Singo footy that you're going to put on an Instagram reel, because that would suck.
Yeah, no, totally. And I do find it like just more intrusive inside, like what you're saying, in like a strength or or like whatever gym etiquette, because it's like, I don't know. Yeah, into my mind, it just seems more vulnerable. Like for it, yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing that we do record so much. It makes sense for me. I mean, I personally record in sessions where I'm trying to figure out beta because I can see body positioning. I'm really good at seeing other people and what they're fucking up on, but really bad at feeling proprioceptively what's happening. Whereas like you can watch your body mechanics, it's much easier to tell what the fuck is going wrong, or at least give you an idea of what you could do differently. But it's kind of an interesting cultural thing, especially in bouldering, where like everybody has to get the sin footy.
Yeah, totally.
It's kind of interesting to me. And like, I've been talking with a lot of people about kind of like tactics to sending and things like that. And a lot of mental struggles in many different ways of like basically compounding the difficulty of pulling it off based on like all of these different factors. But videoing, I feel like, is an extrinsic stressor that doesn't help me perform. So when I'm getting close to sending, I have a group of people who are typically with me now, and they're always like, do you want me to film you? And I always say no, because it doesn't have the anxiety inducing mechanic. Like when I'm getting close, like if I'm not close, the filming helps me. But once I'm really close, that extra push of like, oh, here, it's time now. Don't fuck this up. Someone's recording. It's like, I just want to skip that completely. And usually like the good friends will just record anyways. Like they'll just be like, okay, fuck him. Like we're going to record it.
Set up a camera and just
but it definitely reduces like personal anxiety for me. It's kind of similar in like the first time you pull off all the sequences and you know it's going to happen. I typically like climb over myself, or I'll fumble shit that I didn't fuck up before, because now I'm thinking about sending and not thinking about climbing.
That is 100% what you do.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen so many times. You're like, dude, you know you can do this and you've done these moves before. And yeah, you just get like, yeah, totally climb over yourself. That's a great great term.
Exactly. And I see that a lot too. It's like we're thinking about the hard section, or thinking about a certain checkpoint on the rock that we've got to, and we're not thinking about the movements that we're actually doing in the moment, and it just gets sloppy.
Yeah, it happens. You get ahead of yourself.
Mm-hmm. I mean, is there a similar thing? Have you felt this or seen this in like I know you're not like Olympic lifting, but you're like pushing poundage on the reg. Is there like some anxiety, or does it help you when you're like, oh, I'm going to get my new PR, or I'm shouldering something I've never put up there before?
There, yeah, I mean, I think there's less of it because it's just narrower in focus. Like what I'm doing is just like, that the technique, you just have to be on that day and you just have to try really fucking hard. Whereas with climbing, it's like, yes, you have to have all those things, but then there's so many other factors. There's so many sequences you have to remember. And I think with like stone lifting, or even just like, say like deadlifting really heavy, you just your recovery has to be really on, and you just have to be feeling good that day. And you just have to have grit and try fucking hard. And, and luckily, like, if that doesn't happen that day, you're just like, oh, cool. Well, it's not my day. Maybe like if I rest really good and I like prioritize my recovery for the next couple of days, I'll come back and crush this shit.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many less, I don't want to belittle it, but there are like so many less spheres of engagement for sure. and yeah, in all of the activities.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty good, might be a pretty good caveat into recovery stuff, unless you have any more to say about the etiquette side.
Not off the top of my head, unless it just jumps into my mind.
Yeah, I don't think I have. The only other thing I was going to say is, if you're strength training in a gym, I see this a lot actually. People setting up circuits in a public gym where they'll be on a squat rack, they'll be on another piece of equipment, and then they'll have their dumbbells and kettlebells placed out in the middle, and they're like going in between circuits, taking up essentially space for two other people. It's just really rude, and not something that you want to try to avoid that at all costs, especially if your public gym is really busy. If you're going in at like 5 a.m. and there's nobody there, it's not a big deal. But if you're like 4 p.m. at the front in Salt Lake City and there are 50 fucking people in a little weight room trying to all get a workout in, and you're like, no, dude, I'm on the leg press machine and I'm deadlifting. It's like, fuck off. Choose one of those things, do it. I know you might be crunched for time, but like, then you need to rework your programming. You need to get with somebody who can make your programming more efficient, so you're not being a jackass and taking up half the weight room.
There's totally similar thing as like arcing or endurance training on like bouldering climbs, or like in the main section of the gym, or resource that is limited, like board climbing, like a moon board or a tension board. There's typically only one or two maybe at a gym. And if it's like you're doing your fucking arcing on the the fucking training board, like go to the spray, like go somewhere else and just stay in a corner and just stay on the wall. Whereas like, don't take up the commodities that have finite resources for things that you don't need. That like you can use the campus rungs and just keep your feet on the wall and do all of your stuff on the campus rungs.
You can arc on an auto belay. Like you could just be on an auto belay and just take up that space. I mean, again, yeah, it's not super ideal. Arcing is hard because it's hard to not take up space when you're doing that and happen to be on the wall for like however long, 20 minutes or however fucking long it is. But yeah, just, be cognizant of other people, I think, is the biggest takeaway from the etiquette side of things.
Don't be a piece of shit.
Don't be a piece of shit,
And ask for consent.
Yeah. It's easy. Yeah. Cole, you want to talk about recovery stuff?
Yeah, I mean, where do you think it makes sense to start that?
I mean, I think we could talk about kind of what I have written down as like what is like big picture really important when it comes to recovery, because I feel like this is something that we as athletes tend to hyperfixate on training and like, what more can I do? What more can I do? What can I add in that will make this better? And we're missing a huge piece of the puzzle that is like, how can I recover better for my next session? And that might require doing a little bit less. actually whittling down your training or altering some of those recovery variables in your life. So I think that would be a good place to start, is like, what is
recovery?
Yeah,
I mean, when you say that, I think two ways to frame how I think about recovery is like an objective measurement of a certain stat and then a subjective feeling of rest or freshness.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I've been recently starting to play with like a more objective measure, like a metric, like a Tyndek, which is a force reading device for fingers, or it can be for anything. It's just a force measuring device. And so basically one way to like auto regulate for say finger training or any muscle group training is to record a max force in whatever pull. Let's just say finger curls, like a half crimp deadlift on the Tyndek, and I might read 135 as my max pounds. If I go in and I do a finger workout, the next day I can start my workout by doing that same or Tyndek finger curl and reading the metric.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm reading, 125,
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm basically full. But if I pull that thing to failure and I get like 95 pounds, it's an easy objective measure of like, I am fatigued in this muscle group or whatever, and I probably shouldn't go really, really hard. Like it would shift me into a mindset of like, okay, maybe instead of doing something with a low volume, high intensity, like repeaters or something like that, maybe I'll spend this time to do lower body skill work on the ball.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's a great way to view it. And yeah. I mean, I don't use, I mean, I guess I do use some objective measurements, especially if so I'm just going to take this in terms of like strength training. Like say I'm going to go in and do squats and whatever. Let's say I was squatting 250 pounds on my last session. That was my like working weight after a couple warm-ups. So what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll do my warm-ups, and like generally you're going to know based on the warm-ups. Like you'll be like, damn, this feels heavier than it normally does. And so if it's feeling like really heavy and I'm feeling sluggish and fatigued, I might try my first set at 250. And then if my RPE, like we talked about last episode, if my RPE is, if I'm shooting higher than what my ideal RPE is, I'm like, okay, I can auto regulate and I can just drop the working weight down to 235 or 240. That way in my next set, the RPE is going to fall in the appropriate range. And so that's a really good way to judge if you're recovered. I don't think that it, you not being fully recovered, I don't think it should stop people from still getting some type of work in, but you just have to know how to auto regulate, or like you were saying, switch up and do something different. Like maybe don't hammer away at the squats that day, maybe do some upper body, or, vice versa.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing I think is, intention in that regard. It's like manifesting what is appropriate for your body. So going into the workout with an intention to like understand the level of recovery that you have and maximizing the time in other places, or upping that fatigue in a certain sector to improve fitness. Because like that was it's kind of an objective measure, but it's very subjective in the sense of like feeling and weight pushing and things like that, which makes sense in a block of like, I'm building building a strength block or something like that. There's going to be times when you're exercising at fatigue, but the intention of this block is to increase the amount of fatigue that your body can handle, like a chronic overload.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like almost the Tyndek regulation or something like that is a much more focused intervention, because I'm thinking right now the volume of the work to that specific body part is much less but a much higher intensity. And if I was going to like correlate this, like imagine we were going to do our 1 rep max on squat, And so you're going to need like 100% recruitment. You do that for a day. And then the next day or the day after you want to repeat or up that number, you're probably not going to be able to up that number unless you're fully recovered.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
The intention for those two ideas are different. One's like building mass, building fitness, or whatever we want to put that in quotation marks. And the other is like a very specific increase in intensity for a very specific output. And like for climbers, a lot of times the very intense focus is usually probably on the fingers.
Yeah.
So the 10 deck works well for that. And then I wanted to do also like another objective metric that a lot of people use, and I used to, was like a Whoop with like a heart rate variability monitor, which is like essentially something that monitors you 24/7 and examines the differences in your heart rhythm based on fatigue and sleep and things like that. And so that's a pretty good objective measure of your fatigue that's not based on how you subjectively feel.
Right.
So if you're doing a lot of like aerobic base building or things like that, you might work with HRV rather than like a subjective measure of like, oh, my legs hurt.
I'm going to jump in here and tell you why I do not like using HRV as a metric for judging my recovery. Based on my own personal experience and some anecdotal experience from other people, I think it can be useful. I think it's useful. I mean, data is only useful if it's actually useful, if you're going to use it. So having that metric, I'll just give you an example. So there have been multiple times when I would be wearing a Whoop. So it would give me a recovery, and I would show up to a workout with a poor recovery. And it would say, and so in my mind, I'm like, fuck, okay, well, my recovery is really low. This is telling me I should probably rest more and come back the next day. I'm already here. I'm just going to get a workout in. And so that would affect how I felt, how I actually performed in that workout, because I already had in my mind like, oh, I'm not recovered, so I'm probably going to perform poorly. Therefore, I would perform poorly. This happened to us when I remember we went on a climbing trip to Moe's Valley like a couple of years ago. I think we went with Chelsea, and we were wearing Whoops at the time, and our recovery was fucking tanked. Was terrible because we were climbing like almost every day. So like, yeah, no shit, our recovery is going to be bad. Why we even paid attention to them, I don't know, because it's like we were going to climb no matter what. But
we were also like drinking alcohol and
for sure. But like we knew we knew we weren't going to have good recovery numbers. So like I remember at a certain point being like, why did we wear these for this trip? Like, what is the point of seeing like, oh my God, we have really shit recovery, we're going to go climb anyway? I think it would have been better, at least for me, to just been like, I'm not going to wear my Whoop this week because I know I'm going to get shit recovery, but I need to try hard and perform anyway. And I don't want to get in my head about it. And so that's just why I don't wear a Whoop anymore. I did for, almost a year, and I got some like interesting data. And now I just, if I'm not feeling super recovered, I go in, I do my warm-ups. And if I'm not feeling 100%, I just use auto regulation. I drop the intensity down and still get a good amount of work in. And that works for me. But if Whoop works for people or like the HRV stuff, that's totally fine. But
yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me as well. It like comes back to intention for me as well. Like I don't wear a Whoop anymore, and I probably wear one just the same amount of time. It's like a year or something like that. I do think it can be useful for individuals who may be like on a very, very dense schedule of training. So someone who's like practicing for an Ironman or something like that, where there's like so much activity happening that you're just trying to get an idea of like what your body can handle. There's also like tons of platforms do it inside them, right? Like I coach on Training Peaks. They have their own algorithms to show me like how much fatigue I'm putting into my clients, how much I'm putting into myself, etc. And I mean, the whole overarching idea here of recovery really has to come from what you're working on. And so like the HRV doesn't work for me anymore, right? Because I'm not training aerobically. It's not going to, I get way too much good sleep now. I'm an old man, which is great, which is probably one of the biggest things for recovery is eating well and sleeping well.
Yeah,
but
those are my big two.
Yeah,
those are the big two. I don't think they're my big two. That is recovery. I mean, yeah.
I mean, my biggest intention at the moment is to get the strongest fingers I can and not injure them along the way. And so that intervention of like having a pound metric shows me like how much fatigue I've built in my fingers, because the return on investment for most things is either like low volume or low intensity, high volume is a good return. This is kind of like a general principle, right? So lots of volume at low intensity can work well for things. And then the opposite spectrum, high intensity, low volume can work for certain things. And then obviously like in the middle as well can work for some things. If you're like a CrossFitter and you're like trying to improve your Metcon, right? You're not at the highest intensity and you're not in the lowest intensity, but you're like right in the middle, just redlining. And so really understanding, I think, where you want to go is probably going to benefit how you're measuring your recovery, if you're measuring it at all.
Yeah. And I mean, I think everybody can, I mean, I think no matter what you're training for, the actual foundation of recovery is going to be the same, like good sleep and adequate nutrition. And those are things that I think you have to, if you want to be a high performing athlete or a hobbyist at anything that requires, these high physical demands on our body, those have to be as much a priority as the training, if not more so. I get 9+ hours of sleep every single night. And, again, privileged that I don't have to get up early for a job. I don't have kids. I can go to sleep when I want. I can generally sleep into whatever time I want. So like we are coming from a place of privilege. A lot of people don't have that ability because they have kids for some reason and have to wake up at 6 a.m. Oh, just kidding. We love kids. Yeah, I mean, I could sleep wherever I want. And then like, I think the nutrition side is like so many people undereat because they train really hard and they want to get stronger, but they're like, oh my God, I don't want to eat so much to get fat. And it's like, bro, you are on your way to burnout or overtraining because you're not fueling your body and giving it adequate nutrition to recover and bounce back for your next session. And that's why you feel like shit. Or you're not sleeping well because you're not eating enough. If you eat a lot, it's crazy. You want to go to sleep.
Crazy. And like I use like the red lights and timer on my phone, like automatically set that at 9 o'clock I dismiss notifications and all of the blue light goes away on my phone to like help me sleep. So from like 9 to 7 is like an easy way to get in the habit of like, I am going to maximize the amount of sleep I can get every fucking night.
Yeah.
When people like, you had a nice question here. What's really important when it comes to recovery? What do generally people get wrong? And I will throw myself inside of this one. And it's like active rest. I'm actively resting. Whereas like the term, I feel like active rest is where people get wrong, because like I'm in the gym, moving, doing the things that I want to be doing. And that's not resting.
Yeah. Climbing really easy problems in the gym and doing a lot of it is going to add more to your fatigue and add more time to your recovery. It's really not good for you. That's actually how most injuries happen, is because you have too much volume climbing. So if you're trying to recover, do not, especially even like I see people at the end of their workouts, and this is like Tyler Nelson touches on a lot, is like into the workouts and you're like, cool, I'm going to do a cool down for my body. So I'm going to layer on a ton of really easy volume problems. Dude, you are adding so much unnecessary fatigue to your body and your central nervous system. And you're you're going to get more hurt. You're likely to get more hurt that way than you are if you just stopped, and your body can cool itself down on its own because your body is amazing and does that. You don't need a cool down.
No, totally. I mean, like that, it depends on where you're at with things, right? It's like for most of the people who are climbing regularly at this point, if you've been climbing for like more than a year, like you don't need more time on the wall to get better at climbing. You need to like focus on certain things that you're bad at and then improve those things or whatever it is.
Quality over quantity.
Yes, exactly. Whereas like if you're just learning how to start climbing, it's like just go fucking climbing and you're going to get better at climbing and you don't really have to worry about this whole issue. But yeah, that is definitely a huge pitfall. And now I've found myself on active rest, kind of like just being intent on working other aspects. For instance, like if my fingers or upper body are fatigued, I'm going to do like mobility in my lower body, or I'm going to go onto the wall. I won't even like climb on the wall, but maybe I'll touch 2 holds with my hands so that I'm in position. And then I'll do like footwork. Like how high can I bring my foot off of the wall? How can I engage in this foothold? Can I toe hook from this position? How is the heel hook from this position? And just getting my body like used to proprioceptively understanding, increasing the range of motion, increasing the range of engagement, and not using the upper body at all because I use it all the time in rock climbing.
Yeah. I think
a year ago, I would have been like, oh, active rest. I'm going to like do a couple easy problems.
Right. Whereas active rest should just be like, yeah, going on a walk or the very, very light, easy yoga, doing some stretching at home while you listen to a podcast or watch TV. Like active rest is, should be like I liked how you used to put it when you had me doing the cardio stuff. It was like grandma walking, like grandma pace, like just go fucking so easy. And it's hard for people. We want to kick our ass all the time. And I think most people probably just need more rest and recovery.
I mean, that's true. Like, just to go touch back on what you were talking about with the whoop and like the fatigue score and then ending up performing really well. It's like the bodies are incredible. We see this all the time. It's like it's the 5th day on in a rock climbing trip. It's the last day. There's no way you feel like you can pull whatever your project is off. And somehow, God knows, last go, best go, and you pull it off. Yeah. And it's like sometimes there is the time and place to like focus on recovery, and most of the time it's training.
Yeah, totally. If you're trying to perform, dude.
Like, yeah, if you're outside, your body is like pretty amazing. And
I mean, like, if it's more than a 5-day trip, I think there's like you should maybe think about like, okay, how do I want to split this up? What days do I want to really try to recover? But if you're going like a 3-day trip to Joe's Valley, dude, just go thrash yourself. Who fucking cares? You're gonna like, it's fine. You don't need to be like, okay, from 12 to 6, I'm gonna climb, and then I'm gonna exactly rest this long. It's like, dude, just go try
fucking climbing, bro.
I had some pitfalls that people with recovery. So we touched on the really important things: the sleep, the nutrition. There's also, like outside stress factors. So stress, your body doesn't differentiate emotional stress and physical stress. It's all stress to your body, and it can all affect your recovery. So those are things that are like, not always in our control, but like, work stress, relationship stress, life stress. Those are things that can affect your recovery. So that's just a good thing to know. But where people tend to focus on, which I used to do this a lot too, is like things like foam rolling, things like using massage guns, things like using actual, like physical massage. All of these things feel really good to your body, but there is not enough data showing right now that those actually positively affect your body's recovery. Same with cold immersion. That's been a huge thing for like 10 years. People are like touting this as like a magic pill. There's no fucking like repeated studies that have shown that this affects your recovery in a positive way. I think it's a bit of a waste of time to focus on those smaller things when you could just, put more effort into getting better sleep, eating better, eliminating other stressors in your life.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, like for climbing specifically, and like a myriad of other, I don't see this happening until like really high end, but like range of motion, I think, is probably one of the biggest things that you could do in a recovery setting that will improve performance on the wall. Like that has been like a limiter for me for quite a while, but just in the past, half year, putting that intention into putting it on the schedule and appropriating time for those sorts of activities have paid off significantly versus like doing more weighted hangs or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I do think there are some benefits for doing like cold plunges and things like that, but it's like probably a placebo, and more so like enduring, like your body doesn't want to get in there. So forcing your body to do things that we don't want to do is typically a way to progress in lots of different ways. And I think the only other thing I could think of would be like blood perfusion. Like if you're using it for like in your hands and feet, warm/cold therapy, like push blood throw for certain areas. But yeah, I mean, like,
yeah, it's definitely a cool, like a mental. I mean, I've done cold plunges before, and I've done my cold training. It's a cool mental challenge, but I believe the hype around it has been kind of exaggerated. Totally overblown, especially like, a lot of places doing studies to try to like replicate the findings that like, oh, is this beneficial? And like, they can't find anything and actually one came out recently that showed there's a potential for like a decrease in hypertrophy gains by doing immediate cold plunges after a hypertrophy workout. So I prefer hot baths, Epsom salt baths, dude.
Showers too, man. I'll do hot showers. Like,
dude, fuck. I take a bath almost every night. I probably take 5 baths a week.
Well, you got to think of it like that. Obviously, I'm thinking about this on the fly from like a physiologically perspective. But like when we get super cold, our blood is shunted to the extremities, right? The blood goes into the core to warm itself. It's like any time that we don't have blood perfusion to whatever it is, it's probably not a good thing, especially if like your muscles are fucking pumped out of their mind and all they want is more nutrients. Yep. And you're like, no, I think that shit's going to be better inside my body than out. Whereas also, like warm wet, warm water, like wonderful.
Yeah, it's also just like really stressful for your body. Throw it into fucking cold water. Like, do you like think about it, do you need more stress or do you need to de-stress? You probably need less stress, and jumping into cold water is not going to be a calming experience. So
totally, that's like exactly what came to mind. I just forgot about it when you started to say that. Is like, that's super stress inducing for the body, for the mind, for everything. It's like having instead of like getting into a cold bath of water, it's like going to the grocery store and your girlfriend like fakes you with a pregnancy scare.
Let's just stress the shit out of ourselves. That'll be fine. That'll help recovery.
I would love to hear anybody who listens to this and can send me some articles or whatever evidence contrary to this, but I think the caption for this one's going to be shitting on ice baths.
Shitting in ice baths. How does shit
on?
How much time do you have
left? Because of the time change, I technically have an hour.
Oh, wild. Okay.
Wild.
Sweet. Cool. I think that's all I have as on recovery. Yeah, I feel like we hit a good amount of recovery and kind of like the most important things.
Totally. At least that I can think of right now.
Yeah, totally. So I would like to hear about well, first of all, I'm just impressed at how much you have improved in your bouldering in the last however many months it's been. Like, I guess in the last year, dude, you're crushing it. And I'm just curious, I guess, what that's been like. What do you feel like are the biggest factors that have, I mean, I have some guesses, but I'd like you to say it, of like what's helped you progress over the last year or so with climbing. And then like, tell me about the V10 project you're working on.
Well, thank you. Let's see. I honestly, I guess, would have to say that it probably only really started in October, because like I typically go to the Cascades in Alaska for like May through September. And I was in a relationship this past year, so I didn't work as much as technically I would. So maybe I rock climbed a little bit more than I would have through the summer. But almost every summer since 2017, typically what happens is I like build up some performance in the spring and then let it all atrophy and get skinny throughout the summer as I'm mountain guiding, and then start the process over again in October. So none of that was really different. But starting in late September, early October, this was I started bouldering again. I hadn't bouldered probably more than like a week throughout the whole summer, and came here to, I guess, where did we go in October? Joe's. Yeah, Joe's was probably the first stint of bouldering that I had this year, and it was probably a week or so. And then after that, I think the biggest things that have helped me, one is like going into every session with an intention, be it rock climbing, like outdoors or indoors, like a training session. And what this does that I've seen is twofold, right? I don't have to climb on top of any boulder to have a successful day.
Mm.
And I see a lot of people going outside and maybe not climbing anything or getting to the top of anything and just having like a really shitty experience or feeling bad about themselves because they didn't top out a V2 or whatever it is. And so going into this like past 6 months, every day I have an intention. And that intention could be like, oh, I want to work X sequence, or I want to hang out with friends, or whatever it is. So it kind of takes the pressure off of the performance. And I think that allows me to go more frequently and have a better time. It's like a behavior modification to like make it a little bit nicer mentally to be out there and try hard things and put yourself out there.
That's awesome.
A lot of time on real rock for about 2 months. Maybe I've done it enough now climbing that I can climb maybe 4 or 5 days a week on real rock and still be able to do some moves. Sometimes it's even like the 4th day is my best day. And that kind of drove me into the ground a little bit. So I got a lot of good volume in like October, November, but it also gave my body a lot of fatigue. And so that was a wake up call to like find a way to metrically tell myself to take rest.
And that's where the Tindeck comes in?
Yeah, the Tindeck came in early December. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
So do you use that like like if you're going to go climb outside and you're warming up, and I'm assuming you probably use the Tindeck when you're warming up, do you still use that as a metric of like, oh, that's a little lower than my normal, maybe I'll just maybe I'm not going to try like my hardest project today, or like how do you use that?
I don't use it in the field anymore, or I actually haven't before. I typically only use it now in a training.
Okay.
In a training mindset. And because basically my finger strength was pretty shit. Like I could tell in October when I came to the Buttermilks, or November when I was here climbing with really strong people, and my inability to just hold small holds. My shrimp is dog shit. And so I did 6 weeks, 5 weeks of dedicated 2 days a week weighted hangs. The Dave McLeod prescription, actually, which is very, very high intensity, but very, very low volume.
Yeah.
It's 3 grip types, 3 lifts, and that's it. So 3 per each grip type. And so I started with naturally half crimp, 3-finger drag, and I can't remember the other grip type I used. off the top of my head. I didn't use full crimp the first session. Got through all that, saw about a 20 to 30 pound jump in certain of the positions. And then the next session, I still do this one now. I did it for about 4 weeks as well, but I changed to the grip types that I was weakest at the wall. So my 3-finger open drag was one of my weakest. So I maintained that one. My back 3 half crimp was never attempted. So I did that one last set. And I actually trained full crimp this past session because how bad I was at full crimping outside. Yeah. And I see a lot of evidence of like, don't train full crimping and things like that on the internet. But it's like, if we're using that shit outdoors and I suck at it, I need to get better at doing that in a controlled setting.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's just the same thing we were talking about before, just like not doing unnecessary amounts of volume. But like, if you don't ever full crimp in the gym, you're not going to be able to full crimp outside. So what are we doing?
Exactly. And so that was like a big identifier for my person. Like I knew my finger strength was bad, so I wanted to work on that. My range of motion and mobility has always been bad. Mm-hmm. So I've done like 3 or 4 days a week for maybe 3 months of just like intentionally working on that, be it like using an exercise band on the ground. Like the first progression was like me laying on my back and putting an exercise band on, say, my left foot and on the toes of my right foot and pulling my right foot as high as I could towards my chest, like actively engage that motion on top of just doing static stretching. So I've been increasing my range of motion in a couple different regards and then trying to strengthen it as well. But I did drop all of the maintenance strength work, and that bit me in the ass, to be honest about that.
You gotta live and learn.
You gotta live and learn for sure.
Nice, dude.
And then right now, I'm really, really focused on increasing my limit hand strength and not over training it. So I'm only climbing like project style, like 2 days a week, maybe 1 day a week, and brought everything down a bit. But it's allowed me to like really put through a lot of the grades. Like I can put down 7s and 8s quite quickly here, which has been nice. And for the first time, like you get to the double-digit club, my guy.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm psyched for you.
I did my first 1-arm pull-ups, which is hilarious. I mean, I did a little bit of pull strength training, maybe a 4-week block in the last 6 months, but nothing really focused. I think it was just like the intensity of the climbing has been so high that I've just built mass up there.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome.
And then migrated to recently now I do, instead of weighted hangs, I'm doing 1 arm with assists on a 20 mil.
Which makes sense, yeah. If you can do 1 arm, it's like, yeah, you might as well just like switch to 1 arm.
And for the first time ever, this is hilarious, is like I was doing yesterday, I did a strength session, did some like finger curling off the ground, things like that, a whole bunch of different stuff. And I was doing 1 arms on each side. And for the first time in my life, I was like, oh my God, I get to add a dumbbell into my hands. Yeah. And now I get to like do like a 5-pound weight in one hand and do a 1-arm pull up. And I'm like stoked.
That's awesome. Will you describe your V10 project while I take 20 seconds off screen? I can still hear you.
Totally.
So describe your project.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know. Well, one thing about me is like finding projects is more involved for me because, one, it doesn't really matter about the grade. Obviously, I want it to be difficult. It has to be aesthetically pleasing. And so I have to see it before it's my actual project. So I never write anything down before I see the boulders. And like in November or something, I saw my buddy Brandon climb this V10 called Center Direct, which is on the Grandma Peabody boulder, which is about like 55 feet tall. It's a massive boulder, one of the prettiest chunks of rock I've ever seen. And he said it was the hardest V10. It was his last V10. And this guy climbs like V13.
Oh, and this is Brandon, you said?
Yeah, Brandon is, I think it was his last V10 that he had done recently, and had been trying it for so long.
Really?
And seeing him do that was very impressive. And so I guess to describe the climb, it starts on a double undercling, massive jugs, good feet, which I really like. Fuck scrunchy starts with no feet. And then right off the bat, you go to a good left-hand edge. And I would say it's probably a 12 to 14 millimeter edge. Good feet, back flag off of the right foot, hard left-hand move to a maybe 9-ish millimeter 3-finger triangle hold. It's probably the worst hold on the climb. And from there, you crank down on those 2 holds. You'll bicycle. So there's a good left foot and a right toe hook. And from that move, you have to do a really hard left-hand bump to a shitty, very sharp, maybe 3-finger single pad edge. Keeping the toe hook, you have to maintain that bicycle tension, extend your legs with the toe hook, and then throw the V10 dead point, which is like full extension on a toe hook, right hand to a glassy edge. From there, I just now realized this last session, I have to reel that into a full crimp to get enough power to move my left hand. And then it's a bump to a Waco and a jump to a jug. Technically, it drops off there. Lots of people like it's a weird because like ethically dubious. I don't like drop offs, and there's only certain places that they're allowed, which is hilarious. But that one's technically a drop off, except there's a V2 extension that takes it to the top. It's like 55 feet tall or something like that.
What's the glassy hold that's like the crux hold? What is that hold like? Is it pretty small?
No, it's pretty good. It's probably almost a single pad, 3 or 4 finger.
Wow.
But it's like marble covered in butter.
Yeah.
So if you don't hit it exactly right, you're fucked. And it took me 2 sessions to realize if I hold it open or half crimp or anything that's not full crimp, once the body position changes, you come straight off. Whereas the full crimp allows you to engage and change your body position enough to make it to the next hold.
Sick.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
It took me a whole session to feel like, climbing is so individualistic that like certain things that are hard for some people are easy for others, vice versa. And almost no one has trouble with the bicycle toe hook to left hand before the dead point throw. And it took me a whole session to realize the engagement and body shifting from a bicycle and to maintain that engagement throughout to make it feasible. And like, that's a big thing that I've been working on as well. And I see this as like a stumbling or a pitfall or something to work on for everyone, is that is a 4-point contact move. Like I have to know where my left foot, left hand, and right hand, all of my appendages are and what they're doing. And so that's like the most complicated we can do, right? We don't have more appendages than that.
Right.
So it's taken me this whole season that I've tried to really focus on either in the gym or at certain climbs is like, how do I put in my mind what's necessary to make sure that all 4 appendages are operating at the same time? And I see it like, like a V4 to V6 climber, it's going to be probably the 2 to 3 finger, like the 2 to 3 engagement. Because that's like the first time you're like, oh, heel hooking. Or, oh, I have to maintain engagement into a toe hook. And so you have to like think in the back of your mind, right toe or whatever it is to keep that body point engaged. And I find that very, very, it becomes more complicated the harder you go through the climbing. It's like you're going to need more appendages in more contact to do that. And so just like being intent and like, this is my project right now. So I'm replicating anything that I can to work on in the gym that I have. So like I'll be doing holding bicycles or something like that. And yeah, I mean, honestly, outside of like being really intent on what I'm training on my recovery and just spending a lot of time on real rock, I really can't like say that like any XYZ does it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it seemed just like, it's kind of obvious. Like the more time you spend climbing hard on real rock, the better you're going to get at climbing hard on real rock. It's the SAID principle, the specific application to impose demands. Like, climbing outside, if you climb indoors to get better at climbing outside, yeah, you're going to get better at climbing, but climbing
indoors.
better at climbing outdoors is going to be more efficient. You're going to see better gains because of that principle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've been carrying that too. Into I can't remember what my roommate called it, but it's like basically increasing familiarity with whatever it is, so your body gets more comfortable at doing whatever it is. And so, like for me, since I was able to do like a one-arm pull-up for the first time, I'm not like thinking of ways to like reduce my intensity so I can do more reps on a one-arm pull-up. I'm actually right now at the point where I'm just increasing the frequency at which I'm doing one-arm pull-ups so that my body gets more comfortable at doing them, so I can just walk up and do it. And then I can add more intensity later. The same thing with like holding small edges. It's like I don't have like a minimum edge training protocol I'm doing, but every time I go into the gym, we have an 8mm edge, and I'll try to hang on it. Like if I have fresh fingers, it's like if I get more comfortable at doing that, then I'm probably going to get more comfortable at holding small edges.
Oh, yeah.
I guess one other thing that is really, really, I guess, helped me that I hadn't done before are training on small holds in the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the hold sets in my gym in the backyard that my roommates do are big moves, big holds. And so I'll just opt out a lot of times of just doing those because I do a lot of upper body work. I climb a lot anyways, and I don't need more stressors on my like rotator cuffs to produce more injury. What I really need to focus my time on is what is the tiniest fucking hold that I can possibly hold on to in the gym.
That helped me so much too a couple seasons ago, directly because of Tyler Nelson's training. He had me on a program, and yeah, almost all of the finger training was done on the wall. And the reasoning behind it is amazing. It's like, of course, yeah, you're gonna yes, you're gonna get stronger doing it, but it's just like that immediate, like it's so specific to what you're doing outside. Like, obviously, that's gonna make you better at doing it outside. And awesome gains. And it's just, I would much rather do a training on small holds on I love the new tension board for that. There's one at the front, and when I was still climbing, I say that like I'm retired. I'm only temporarily retired right now, but I would do my training there, and like the holds can get so nasty and small, and I saw great improvement on my ability to climb on small holds in Little Cottonwood, which is like all the holds are. They're small.
Totally. Yeah. You say obviously, but like most people, it's not obvious at all. Unfortunately, it's like, it wasn't obvious for me for a while. I mean, I've almost never done like strict hangboard protocols. I've almost always just went climbing and things like that. Whereas now I can understand I'm doing 2 to 3 sessions a week of a focused, intensive, either finger curls with the Tindec or weight off the ground or one arm hangs. So those are like very hangboard specific workouts. But for the first time, I'm like taking like 3 days a week or more to do coordination work, where I'm taking the smallest holds I can possibly grab on the wall and trying to get those gains of just like feats of strength, quote unquote, to apply to the climbing specific medium. And then obviously climbing outside on small holds.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. It's been really watching your videos has been the first time in 9 months that I was like, I got the like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like the butterfly feeling where like I could feel what it was like climbing through you. And I was like, oh, it was the first time in like almost 9 months that I was like psyched. And I was like, oh my God, I want to go climbing, but I just literally I don't have space for it right now. But it got me really psyched to like eventually come back to it. But it's just like, priorities at the if I started climbing again, it would really eat into my goals I have for this year. And I'm like, you know what? I'm psyched on this right now. I'm just going to keep doing this.
You don't think you might do like 1 day a week or 1 day every 10 days?
I don't. Well, climbing is so hard on, like, I'm kind of going pretty hard. Well, okay. It might be different when I switch my programming at the end of this month, because And this is a good segue. We can talk about kind of like our year-long, what our program and goals look like for this year. I've been doing kind of a mass building thing where I've been actively trying to gain weight. I mean, I've been at it for like a year, and I was able to gain 10 pounds, which was my goal, which for somebody my size and with my mass, it's like I don't have a lot of room to put stuff on unless I take PEDs, which it will never fucking do. It's just
Performance enhancing drugs.
Yeah. It's just not anything I'm interested in doing. I even talked to a nutritionist the other day, and we did kind of some calculations looking at based on like my height, my current mass, my DEXA scan, about how much my genetic potential for mass. And he's like, I think you could I think you could reasonably put on 8 more pounds of muscle, which is cool. And so that's kind of my goal for this year. I'm sitting at about 202, 203, and to get to 210, and then to do maybe a cut and cut back down to like mid 200s would be really cool. But so anyway, I've been doing a lot of hypertrophy based work, and so especially with arms, like really working like hammer curls and like bicep curls. If I know that if I go and I climb one day, the tendonitis is just gonna, because I'm already like on the verge of tendonitis just from doing this type of training. And I've tried to do that before where I've strength trained and climbed at the same time, and I always get tendonitis in my brachialis. I get in the same spot all the time. It's because I try to do too much. So I don't think throwing a day of climbing in would be beneficial. I think it would just give me gnarly tendonitis and set me back.
Kudos on the discipline there, bud.
It's hard because I want to do it all. I would love to be able to climb and stone lift really heavy and like do hypertrophy work and like, but you have to know your limits.
Totally. Yeah.
You got to prioritize. Yeah. But I do have some cool like goals, for this year. Like I said, I'm about to change my training at the end of March. I'm actually I'm doing a little like stone competition at my coach's gym that he runs. It's there's 2 weight classes. I'm obviously I'm going to be in the lower class, it's like novice and elite. I'm definitely not doing the elite class, but the novice class is a 290-pound stone to shoulder. You have 7 minutes, as many times as you can.
Whoa.
And I did, I think I got, we did a test run, and I got, 6 or 7. I think I got.
Oh, wow.
Which
7 to the shoulder? Like this is like an AMRAP almost.
Yeah. As many reps as you can. And it's like, I mean, you have to pick it up from the ground, cradle it, get in your lap, stand up with it, jump it all the way to your shoulder, get the stone level, back down. And you have 7 minutes, and you just have to do it as many times as possible. And so I was like, I could probably get 3. Like, that's really hard. And I was able to get, I think I got 6 or 7.
Damn, bro.
And so it's really cool. It's brutal as fuck, but that's a goal that's coming in like 3 weeks. So me and my coach have been actively training for that. Luckily, I can train directly with the stone that's being used because he's like, this is the stone that we're using for the competition. Just use that. So I'll have good, I'll understand how to use it. And like where all the good handles and stuff are. But I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to take a much needed deload for like 2 weeks. I'm getting a big tattoo from Marie. So that'll also incentivize me to rest. But I haven't had a true deload. I mean, like the holidays, I was off for like 10 days, but I think my body, I've hit a point where I know I can feel it. I'm like looking forward to having a deload, I almost never, like when I leave the gym, I'm like, holy shit, I can't wait till I can like rest for 2 weeks. And that's just so not me. Like I'm always going. So that'll be cool to have the deload. And then I'm going to switch almost specifically into strength based stuff, and not necessarily trying to build muscle or do any hypertrophy specific work. I'm just going to try to maintain that and do some strength stuff, really specific stone work, because
maximize that 210 pounds that you've created.
Yeah, take that 200 plus pounds and like actually make it really strong. But you know, keep eating so I can hopefully keep putting on weight. And then I really have a lot of stone goals this summer. A lot of the stuff that I was able to chest before, I really want to be able to shoulder. That's kind of my goal. And there's a 370 pound stone that I established called the Elder Stone that I have not been able to even put into my lap, that I would love to stand up with. I think like, you know, chesting close to 400 or if not 400 pounds is a big goal for me this year, which I may be feasible. And then shouldering as many stones around 300 pounds would be fucking sick.
It's so funny because that's like theoretically sounds like impossible for me. You know, like it's not even something like feasible. Like I hear the word 400 pounds and I'm like, dude, I couldn't even make that thing budge on the ground. Like I couldn't even move it a millimeter probably. And you're like, well, I can just pick it up all the way.
I think it's funny because that's like my
outside your house and you can use my van.
What'd you say?
I said I could just park my van outside your house and you can just use that. Dude.
You just pick up a corner of your van. So that's exciting. There's also something that I've been working on with my homie Larson, and then a little bit with my coach Ryan, is creating a Little Cottonwood Gauntlet, which, oh dude, it's gonna be so gnarly. So the thing is gonna be you park at the bottom of Little Cottonwood in a place called Temple Quarry, and there's gonna be 7 to 10 stones in this circuit that you have to lift, but you cannot be assisted by a vehicle. So like you have to park at Temple Quarry, you have to run to the first stone, whatever it is, lift it, go to the next one, lift it, and the whole time you're doing it for time. So you have to run from the bottom of Little Cottonwood Canyon, to whatever the point is up the canyon where the last stone is, lifting the stones along the way, and then your time ends when you lift the very last stone. So like the elevation gain, and it's probably like it's at least a mile of uphill gain while doing these really high intensity lifts in between. It's gonna be fucking brutal, and I have agreed to be the first one to do it.
Nice.
As the guinea pig, to just set the time and be like, okay, surely y'all can beat this fucking time. So looking forward to doing that in the summer when all the snow's melted off and all the stones are cleaned up and uncovered. That's gonna suck.
That sounds amazing, actually. I feel like that is the perfect last of the subtext for the episode. The Cottonwood Gauntlet.
Yeah, it's gonna be gross if anybody wants to try it.
Check it out on Strava.
Oh my god. I'm sure there'll be a video of it, getting my ass kicked and probably throwing up and crying.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing. I would love to be there to witness that fucking insanity. I have 3 minutes left on my laptop before it dies, so that is our timer.
Nice.
But if you guys have anybody who listens to or watches this, if you guys have any questions, comments, anything, please reach out and we'll try to yammer about bullshit.
We'll go on random tangents and rants for you.
In Fantasyland.
In Fantasyland with the frogs and dragons.
I have a PT session right after this to see how I can, come back stronger than before. So I'm excited to work with professionals as well and see what things I already don't know that I'm doing wrong.
Godspeed to your leg.
Thank you. Godspeed to your 10 more pounds and your deload.
Yep. I'm gonna go eat like 1,000 calories right now.
All right, baby. Love you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.